Hi, Julien. Welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you on FS Brew.
Welcome, Julian.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Perfect.
Excellent. Excellent. So you've worked across really big tech and innovation startups, and now you've chosen to take on the much ignored section of the insurance value chain, claims. Now, why did you decide claims as the battlefield worth attacking, worth fighting for, rather than distribution or underwriting or embedded insurance, which typically everyone goes after because there's a hype around that?
Well, the first thing is that I didn't really choose insurance. Insurance chose me. It's a challenge I came across that I thought was interesting. I was working as a consultant, came across a problem that was worth solving. It was just after OpenAI had launched their first public ChatGPT model, and I pitched it to the insurance company I was working with, and they said no. And so I decided to call a former colleague of mine from Google, an amazing machine learning engineer, to build a prototype for them. And we showed them the prototype and they bought into it. And that's what made us go into claim. Little did we know at the time that we would become a company. But the more we dug, the more we saw that it was. And actually, claim is not even the battlefield anymore. That's what got us started. But the real battlefield now is fraud, waste, and abuse. And that's where we spend most of our time today.
Right.
Got it. Got it. Obviously, you can see Julian is calling in from Singapore. You got the beautiful background and stuff there. So, Julian, we did a little bit of research, obviously, of your past interviews and recordings. And one of them, no, nothing bad. One of them, you said that the industry itself is on a course towards hitting a meteorite, right? So if we strip away those buzzwords, what are the meteorites, or what is the meteorite in your example? Is it this medical inflation in claims, or the legacy operations, fraud? And what is most underestimated by insurers today?
Yeah. So as usual, when you're on a course when a meteorite is on a course to hit a planet, I think it's the universe conspiring, right? So you mentioned a few. Medical inflation through the roof. Singapore just announced the last numbers. It was 16.9%, if I'm not mistaken, or around that. That's right. Huge. And it's been like that for years and pretty much across all the countries. Most of the health insurers are not making money, and that's not new. And legacy system have over time build a strategic blind spot for them. They haven't been collecting data from claims, and because they're not collecting data, they can't measure leakage. And because they can't measure leakage, the money is flowing freely. And now it's built up to the point where insurers are no longer focused on increasing the top line. They have to build a resilient operation, but they find themselves in a situation where they really lack of data to actually build a resilient system. And so if they don't move fast, basically the leakage is just going to make the business completely unsustainable. That's not already the case. And on the other side, just to close the loop, regulators have started to come in and to intervene by capping the amount of premium. And so You've seen that in Malaysia in the last cycle, where they say, oh yeah, medical inflation is that high, but we'll cap the premiums at a few percent. And so effectively, payouts are increasing much faster than premiums are, and they don't really have the necessary toolkit to stop the hemorrhage. And so that's really what I mean by that.
Yeah, makes sense. Absolutely. Yeah.
So keeping a check on this whole leakages is perhaps one of the core ways that you can build in a resilient organization. So just building on that itself. Now, through the tools and through whole AI that you have built on, tell us, what does an ideal claims team look like? Is it removing repetitive jobs? Is it being a lot more efficient? Is it a combination of many of those? Talk us through what in practice does that team look like?
For you to understand why this would be the ideal team today, a claims team still, like in most of the places, the claims work is still very manual. In lots of countries, they still receive stacks of paper. We're not even talking about scan paper. We're talking about boxes of PDFs. In some other countries, a bit more developed, they get those in PDF format. In some very advanced country, I guess the UAE, being a more modern country, is part of those. They get some form of digitalization, but the process of reviewing the claim is still very manual. And so that means that people spend their day working on legacy system, opening different windows, and literally checking line by line if the claim is correct, with the pressure of time, because people want to be paid fast, and providers want to be paid fast. And so they have to do that under pressure of time. And so eventually they don't capture enough data. They capture incomplete and inaccurate data. And so from there, not much can be done and not much intelligence can be built. And so the The ideal claims team, I guess, for today, and it's probably going to evolve. The first part is the claims team shouldn't be capturing the data, not in 2026. Yeah. Even when we're talking about handwriting, that doesn't really make sense. Medical coding should be done automatically, and that's not even the case. If you look at the US, medical coding is mandatory from the provider side, but it's done incorrectly. In most of the other countries, or a lot of the other countries, there's no medical coding provided by the providers, and so the insurers have to do it. And so you end up having teams using 250 out of the 70,000 diagnoses that exist. So that gives you, again, a level of accuracy that exists on the market. And so that can be done automatically. And once you have that, and once you have access to all the details that are in a claim documentation or in prioritization, you can actually monitor what providers are doing, and you can assess the quality of the treatment plan that's been suggested by a provider. And so while still 80-90% of medical providers are doing an amazing job, or thankfully, a few of them are actually gaming the system and making it really bad for the rest of us. And so being able to actually screen 100% of the claim with very accurate data and have medical team knowing exactly where to look at, and in a fraction of the time that they do today, be able to catch those inaccuracies and sometimes abuses behavior, and a lot of them are actually intentional. That, I think, is what ideal claim processing looks like. And part of it also means 80-90% of the claims shouldn't even have manual intervention. If they're clean, if the provider has done a good job, then people should be paid very fast. Authorization should flow fast. And at this moment, that builds frustration from all the parties involved, and that creates unnecessary frictions in the market for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting how, sorry, I was just wanted to add that it's interesting how no matter where the maturity of insurance sector lies, and we know it's different in some parts of the world and so on, claims seems to be a common denominator where we've not progressed quite strongly, even in a very mature market, which is a shame. But also from what you're saying, Julien, it feels like there are a lot of stakeholders that need to come into place to be able to get that data flow coming in for a claims team to finally be able to crunch as well. So I think there's a lot of those stakeholder involvement, and therefore there is a discrepancy happening as well.
Yeah, I think there's a historical or contextual factor that plays into that as well. The claim function is not exactly the most influential in an insurance company. And one of the reasons for that is because insurers have been chasing top-line improvement for decades. They were trying to penetrate more the market, trying to improve how much money they could make. And so basically that was about getting more clients and getting more clients from the competition. Now the game has changed a little bit, and especially in mature market where it's harder to differentiate and it's harder to find new clients as the market matures. And so all of a sudden you have companies trying to become more resilient. And the one place they can look at is that dirty, dark basement where no one ever wanted to go, because there was like this kind of like very manual, clunky operation, and you really don't want to open that door because once you're inside, you may never come out. But all of a sudden, these doors open and people have to actually look under the hood and say, oh, okay, we need to fix the engine now. And so that there's really like a moment that's happening. And the other reason for that, I think, is because the technology wasn't ready. Even 2-3 years ago, you couldn't actually do what we do today. And I'm not even talking about just Novo. I'm talking about the only reason why we exist is because the technology has evolved, right? And so now it opens new opportunities as well, where before it was like, all right, we can't do anything about that. So let's just look the other way and do something else to improve the operation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I like the way you said it's a dark basement, and many times as an external insurtech, you're not allowed to reach the dark basement. Let's talk about selling, which is where a lot of these insurtechs struggle, and we talk to a lot of them. What is the hardest part of selling to these insurers, and is it about ROI? I know that claims is when there is waste, it can be significant, but it's not really a very expensive function if you look at it in terms of operational cost, right? If you just look at the people, it's difficult to prove ROI. So what is it? It's like earning trust, or do you use change management in terms of internal champions? And or is it just, hey, I've got a nice new shiny AI tool, so let's talk?
Hell no, at least not us. We've been trying to stay away from the hype. And then again, I was a digital transformation consultant before I jumped into that pool. And the one thing that I've kept doing for 10 years was forget about the hype and the buzzword, because they're not going to help you to transform. I think there's several things in what you said. The first thing is that basically, once you build a tech solution, 50% of the job is done. And the other 50% is actually getting it into the hands of the users. And whenever you talk about enterprise, whether it's insurance, whether it's any other industry, but the more traditional, the more regulated, the worse it gets. It's a hell of stakeholder management, processes, internal alignment, prioritization, timing. So there's a number of variables that you don't really control that come into play. And insurance is a traditional regulated industry. So that's probably one of the probably harder to penetrate. It's a small pool of people that know each other very well. They've been sold miracles for years, so now they're more skeptical than the average enterprise people. And so you get into a space where people don't really believe what you're telling them, have good reason not to, where they're not necessarily the most modern thinking. They haven't had really modern tools for a long time, and they haven't had to either. They still rely a lot on human relationship. That's also a way to say it doesn't really rely on technology that much. And so you cannot get into the pool, right? I think there's a mix of stuff that are needed to be done, build the trust. So that means building relationship, educate the industry on what AI can and cannot do, educate the industry in the fact that we're not selling AI, we're selling a solution to a business problem, and that's no different from any other solution. Yeah. And we're doing that in an ethical way, in a responsible way. We know our job. And there's some work in building your expertise, not so much for yourself, but for the people you talk to and making them trust you. And that takes a while. And then understanding what is the stakeholder map internally that you need to like follow. Who are it's almost like an escape game, right? You're like, all right, who I need to talk to first and who I should absolutely not to first, right? Because some of them will throw me out of the window. Some others might be interested because I'm touching on the pain point, right? And who's the second one in that? And who should actually talk to the department because that's not me. And so it took us a while at the beginning, but that's kind of like the way you do it. And now I think we have a clearer map of what it is to sell Novo AI in a company and what is the Zelda journey inside that company that we should follow and who we should try to talk to, who is our ACP, who's going to be our users, who's going to be our consultant internally, who are going to be the people that might feel threatened by the fact that we're coming in and identifying some of the flags that right away that's not going to work out, or some others that, there might be some appetite for what we're doing here. Now to your second part.
Absolutely. I think a couple of follow-ups on that is, what is the lead time for closing an account that you typically get? And can we also know the average ticket size of the deals?
It's a hard question to answer, not because I don't want to, but because we're still very early. And second, because it varies greatly from one insurer to the other, right? So I think the ticket size is largely function of the volume of the claims book and the portfolio of the company. The larger it is, the bigger the ticket size will be. We have a small implementation deployment fee when we come in, which is like a way to ensure that we have commitment from our stakeholders, but that's irrelevant in the scale of money that we're talking with insurers. And then we take a fraction of the claim cost, right? Tickets can be very big when you talk about, insurance company, large insurance companies have millions of claims per year. And so if you take a fraction of that, very quickly becomes a large volume. But lead time for closing a client, the fastest we've done was 3 months from the first discussion to a POC with someone we had never met. But the first client we closed, it took us. So sometimes it's not even regular, right? You take 3 months to get an agreement and you're like, cool, we're going to be done. And then the next stage is going to take 6 months to be implemented.
Yes,
so sometimes it goes from 6 months to 18, sometimes even 2 years. But it's not abnormal. I think it's a function of the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think 6 to 9 months are pretty much normal, at least from what I hear in this part of the town. Yeah.
Punishing.
And to your question about ROI, sorry, because I missed that part, is you raise a good point, and that's what made us move a little bit away from claim processing. When you talk about claim operation, especially in Asia where manpower is pretty cheap, the way to solve that problem was to be throwing more bodies at the problem, right? We have a peak of seasonality, hire 20 people in a cheap country, and the problem is solved, and that's it. And that doesn't even make a dent on the P&L. Now that makes it a non-urgent, not really important problem. Now, when you start looking into leakage, that's where it becomes interesting. Average global is supposed to be 10%. That's a gross underestimation. In countries like Singapore, medical inflation is 16.9. We can catch about 15% of illegitimate payment on a portfolio. So that gives you an idea of the abuse. And that's in line with the estimate that we've seen of 15%. You go to Thailand, Vietnam, we can go up to 35%. So justifying the ROI when you look at markets like that, if 2/3 of the money that you have in your bank account is going to payouts, and 1/3 of that is actually thrown out of the window, and I tell you I can help you recover 7 to 10 to 15%, then all of a sudden you start counting in millions, and that's fairly easy to justify why you would go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Makes sense. Julien, earlier you mentioned about the whole idea of building trust with the insurers. Now, the conversely, insurers look to obviously building a trust and differentiation with their customers. And one of the things typically a good insurer looks at is this moment of truth at the time of claims. Now, what's the sort of trade-off that one should, as an insurer, they should look at between building speed, but also having that touch and that whole explainability, especially when AI is involved in claims decisions?
The first thing I'll do is disagree with your first statement. I think insurers have struggled to actually differentiate in market. One of the first jobs that I'd done for this insurance company was to do market research. And the big insight that came out is that no one had any idea on how to differentiate one insurance to the other. They all pretty much hated the insurer. It's a product that you buy that you don't really want to spend money on. And then that's a product where you expect not to work the moment you need it. And it's not even my words. That's what the public actually consuming insurance today is saying. And that's across the board. Doesn't matter what insurance they have. And the main differentiator is usually the person you talk to. If you're lucky enough to talk to someone that's senior and engaged, you're going to have a good experience, whether that's a broker or a direct insurer. If you have someone that's either too junior or not really incentivized in helping you out, then your experience is going to be terrible. And while insurers, most of the insurers that I've talked to actually have no intention not to pay their claims, they're not doing a very good job at it. We talked to insurance company that tell us, oh, we have a 14 days TAT, but really in average, we have 3 to 4 weeks to pay claims that could be today paid instantly. So yeah, there's a differentiation factor, but it's almost not a differentiation factor. It's the bare minimum expectation from the users, and it's not reached today. So people have not even a very high bar of their insurance company, and today it's not. Most of the time, it doesn't. The experience is disappointing, and so I'd say, yes, there's a huge leverage in claim processing, in speeding up the time at which people are paid. Where I see more differentiation is not, hey, I have an insurance. I've been paying for my insurance for 5 years. First time I claim, it takes you months to pay me back. You've asked me 7 questions in between. That's kind of, it's a bit irritating. That's not exactly the way you would experience any product that you buy, right? And I think the way to differentiate is to replace the insurance, especially in the place of a protector. You buy protection, you should expect to be protected. So imagine tomorrow you travel to Thailand and you break your leg. You find yourself in a country where you don't know the culture, you don't know the quality of the hospitals, you don't speak the language. More likely than not, the people at the hospital will not necessarily speak English super well. And you have to decide on the spot whether you should do that surgery on your knee, on your leg or not. It puts you in a super vulnerable position. And what you have in front of you is the chance that someone is selling you surgery rather than selling you the right treatment. And that's where insurers have very a strong play to gain the trust of their members. They said, hey, I'm here for you, actually. I'm going to help you find out whether this hospital is good because I have the data. I'm going to help you determine whether that treatment is the best for you based on all the data I have on standard operating procedures and how this kind of condition should be treated. And if I'm not entirely sure that this is the right way to do it, I'll direct you to another hospital that have a better reputation and you'll get a second medical opinion and I'll pay for it. I'll even pay for your flight ticket to another hospital if I think this one is trying to screw you up. And then all of a sudden, if I tell you that your insurer is doing that, you never change insurer anymore. You want to stay with this one because it's so precious to have this kind of health at this moment. And that's really what protection means, I think, in my opinion. And you could think about the same when you talk about motors insurance, when you talk about travel insurance, when you talk about any type of insurance, right? PNC, if your house take fire, you should hope that the insurer is here, like even book the hotel for you when you don't have a house anymore, right? So that applies to every single line of insurance, at least the one that are on personal lines. And that's something where most insurers are still pretty far away from. Sorry, I get excited about it because I think that's really cool if we can get there.
True. We can see the passion.
It's good to see that. I think now would be a good time to ask you what exactly Novo AI does in the claims piece and how can it bridge the competitive gap between sort of the large incumbents and smaller, more agile insurers? So that'd be a good question to get answered.
But to begin with, our target today is large insurers, right? We imagine that small new insurers, and that's been the big majority of the insurtech that have been created in the last decade. We were mostly a distribution play. And so we think they're digital native and they should be doing a better job at all those operations. But so what we do concretely, the first thing that we hopes. But now we see some good things happening. The first thing that we do is actually automate claim processing. And so from extracting the data, orchestrating it, coding medically the claims, and so really identifying what is the diagnosis based on the doctor's note. And we do that better than certified coders and A-grade students in the US. And then from there, we compare the treatment plan to clinical guidelines. And so effectively, the output is We managed to automate 80% or more of claim processing. So no requirement for manual operation, but that's table stakes. The real game is once you've done that, accelerate the review of the ones that are remaining and flagging everything that's inconsistent in them so that claims team and clinical team can review those claims 10 times faster and prevent abuse at the source. So reviewing prioritization and so really flagging malpractice, unnecessary procedures, lengths of stay that are way too long. So anything that's not medically necessary, flag it to the insurer so that it can be prevented before it's executed, and it can serve as a base for guiding the patient, as I was explaining before. And on the other side, we'll monitor claim portfolio 24/7 through agentic solution to surface new trends and billing patterns. And so we'll identify what are the billing patterns of the fraudulent providers. We'll help insurers effectively identify where the leakage is coming from and what are the strategies that the bad apples are using to squeeze more money out of the system. And so the impact is loss ratio improvement, expense ratio improvement, better user experience. We take a lot of the load out of the operation, and that means happier team as well. The claims teams actually love using us because we make it a fantastic UX for them, and they can spend their time on something interesting now.
Got it.
Fabulous. It sounds like one that needs to be solved even for our region, as we are based out in the Middle East, and UAE and Saudi are a very exciting market when it comes to medical insurance, but they also face the problems of the leakages and the very high expense ratio, loss ratio, and so on. So it's just one of those things that needs to be solved. Now, if you were advising any of those insurers based here in the UAE or in Saudi Arabia, what is that one lesson that you have learned from Singapore market, given all that shifts that are happening from a regulatory point of view there as well? Would you give to the insurer here?
I don't know that I can give advice to insurers that be very pretentious, but from my understanding, the UAE has done a very good job in centralizing health data and creating an open source ecosystem. I would advise insurers to leverage that as much as they can. Leakage is happening all over the world, whether you're in the US, whether you're in Europe, whether you're in Asia or in the Middle East. That's whenever healthcare becomes a business, you'll have people trying to optimize the revenue. And among them, you'll have some of them that are doing it not in the most ethical ways. And that can't be avoided. And that's intentional. Thankfully, it's not the big majority of them, but the ones that are doing it, they're doing it very well. Having a data-driven strategy to stop them is the best way. Humans are not very good at avoiding patterns. They're not really good at scaling fraudulent behaviors. It's really hard to do, even with AI. And leveraging today the technology to actually read those data and extract the right insights so that can be stopped can really help them build resilient strategies to stop that. And the second part, and I'll preach for my own parish, but I wouldn't advise insurers to try and do it internally. We see how hard it is today for insurers to attract AI talent. If you're an AI talent, you're going to be stuck in an organization that doesn't move fast enough. When you're in a startup or you're in a big tech company, you ship every day and you actually build product and stuff, right? So the AI talent are not flocking to the insurance industry because it's too slow. And I would advise them to co-design solution with vendors, whether it's Novo is a good choice, but there's other very talented people on the market. And really to go with an open mind and to say, okay, those are our problems, share as much as possible about their requirements and what they're feeling, be the absolute expert on the insurance ecosystem because they are, and use people that are very good at building technology so that they can solve their problem. And that partnership is something that we were lucky to have from day one. And that has helped us to build solutions that are very relevant for the market. And so when you have this real good partnership, that's something that's where magic happens.
So Julien, a follow-up on that is that obviously you're based in Singapore, and is your primary market Singapore and countries nearby, or right now you're just focused on Singapore?
So Singapore can never be a market in itself, right? If you build a company for Singapore, right? It's too small. It's a fantastic place to build a company. Business is very easy. It's also a big headquarter for most of the regional insurers. Yes. A lot of them are still based in Hong Kong, but the big majority of the one of the dynamic, I would say, like Singapore is a bigger hub, simply said. I think life insurance is still bigger in Hong Kong, but for the rest, a lot of it is happening in Singapore. We're based in the country. So it's a fantastic place to start working from. But really, like right from the beginning, our markets were Thailand. We actually started working with Thailand first, and then Vietnam, because they're bigger headaches for the insurers, and then Hong Kong and Singapore came next. From there, we started working with insurers that had claim and assistance company that had claims coming from 90 different countries. Wow. Today, we process claim from a lot of them. The last contract that we signed with our first client make us expand to Europe and Latin America.
Okay.
And now we started working as well with Latin American insurers, with European assistance companies. And we'd had a few discussions in the Middle East, none that had come through yet, but we're hopeful that it's going to happen soon.
So Middle East is definitely on the radar. That's good to know.
That's good to know.
Absolutely. There's very good company there. I think the market is growing fantastically. I think it's still a very young market when it comes to insurtech. And so that's an opportunity for us as well compared to more mature market. And it's not far away, right? So in terms of time zone, it's super easy to work with the Middle East as well, because it's much easier than when I have call with Peru, for instance, which is a bit far away.
Yeah. Very good. I think that kind of brings the main section to a close, and we have a very exciting rapid fire round where we expect answers in 60 seconds or less. Vidya will kick us off if you're ready, Julien.
I don't know that I'm ever ready for that, but let's go.
Okay.
So it should be fun and quite light. So we get to see the person, the leader behind the company itself. Here we go. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in your career?
That sometimes making your stakeholders happy is more important than doing the job well.
Okay.
That cost me a job once.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What's that one word to describe your leadership style?
Direct.
Nice. What's your favorite city for travel or business?
That's tough. In Asia, I'd probably say Bangkok. In the world, probably more Rio de Janeiro.
Okay.
Nice.
That's a nice city. Yeah.
Yes. What's a book or a blog or a podcast that you would recommend the most?
Podcast yours, obviously.
Thank
book,
you.
one of my favorite reads would be The Hard Things About Hard Things. It's one of the most interesting entrepreneurship journey that I've read.
A great book, yeah.
I think it prepared me well for this one. And blog, still think that Y Combinator has great content. The Do Things That Don't Scale is probably more than a decade old, and I still share it with some people because I think it's something that a lot of people should read. So some might be edging, but some of it is still like pure intelligence, I think.
Absolutely.
Excellent. What's the most exciting tech innovation in insurance out there for you?
What else?
Indeed. Ranjit, over to you.
Very good. Okay. Who would you say is the most inspiring entrepreneur or business leader for you?
Oh, that's a tough one. It's hard not to fall in the cliche on this one. I think I'll pass on this one. I really genuinely...
We can come back here.
Yeah.
If you had the opportunity to go back and give an advice to your younger self when you joined the industry or even when you started working, what would you say?
First, I consider that I'm in the tech industry. Even though I serve insurers, we're a tech company. And so I would say learn to code earlier. I'm a terrible coder.
Even today with all the AI developments?
Especially today with all the AI developments.
Yeah, that's what I'm also saying.
The ones who know how to code are the absolute master of this world because they understand how the machine works.
Yes. And what is one emerging industry trend that you're most excited about?
AI is what made me change the direction of my career I haven't been that excited by technology for, I think, since the early days that I was working at Google. And the reason for that is because it's been a while since a new technology came that can go into the hands of the users and actually get everyone to create something, whether it's something useless or something useful, whether it's something fun, whether it's I think it empowers people to build stuff and create stuff of value. And that's been a long time since it existed. If you look at Web3, if you look at blockchain, those were kind of like obscure development. They have tons of value and tons of use cases, but you ask 99% of the world what's blockchain about, and none of them can give you like even a high level definition. AI people might not be able to define it, but like a lot of people use it and they can do stuff with it. And that's what I'm excited about.
Absolutely. The scale of adoption is simply staggering given the time period, right? Yeah. Going towards risk, now we're talking insurance, right? So there's risk. The biggest career or personal risk that you ever taken?
It was 2.5 years when I launched Novo at the same time that I had a kid.
Okay. Absolutely.
Not necessarily recommended to everyone, but it's a fun ride for different reasons. I'll tell you that one is growing more healthily than the other.
Let's hope both of them are healthy. And what is the kindest thing anyone has done for you?
The list would be very long. And I'm a very big advocate for pay it forward. The latest example is the number of people that have helped us in our journey for Novo AI and continue to help us. And more often than not, for no apparent reason, just for the sake of seeing us win. And so we build a crew of cheerleaders. We have a fan club of Novo, not necessarily people that are noisy and coming with a boom on the bench, but continuously making intros and actually putting their name on the line so that we can make a little progress and so that we can talk to the right people. Yeah, the list is long when it comes to that, and there's not a week pass by where someone is helping us to go. That's fantastic. And I don't think we could do it without them.
That's great to hear. Yeah. So the karma quotient is strong then. That's good.
Yeah, maybe. I think maybe because people want the industry to change, and maybe because they see that we're putting really thought into it. And we've had this feedback as well where someone told us, like, when I saw you coming and talking about AI, I was like, yeah, here. And I was a snake oil seller. And then after conversation thinking, actually, those guys are they're going deep and they're really trying to do something, and they're sincere about that they're doing, and like they've actually done their homework. And 3 years ago, I couldn't have a conversation about insurance, not even like the insurance product that I own. And now I'm capable of working in a room with a CEO and have a proper discussion and a deep one with insurance, right? So I think it shows, and people like kind of get that vibe. And my co-founder has been going super deep in the technicalities of insurance as well. And yeah, people like want to reward us for that. And again, like it's very often, and thanks to them, we've been growing, and clients and non-clients alike.
Very good. It looks like the wind is behind your back. That's great to hear. And I think that's a great point to bring this podcast to an end. It's been great having you on the show, Julien.
Thank you. I owe you a name for the entrepreneur. So I'll name a friend instead of naming one of the common usual suspect. Maybe I'll say Chris Fong. Chris Fong is the founder of the Xuler Network, the network of Google alumni, and is the founder of K.AI. And I've been impressed by the relentless energy that is put into building a network of 35,000 people, and now has built a company on top of that, and has been one of the people that I've been looking up to, and also one of the people that appears in the list of the people that have been helping us greatly.
Excellent. That's then the right spot to call this to an end. Fabulous.
Indeed. Thank you, Julien.
Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks a lot, and have a good one, and I'm looking forward to listen to your other episode. Thanks a lot.